I'm not even going to waste your time. You've seen the title. Let's just talk about it. When Season 9 had eventually come out to the game, it was to address the core problems within the game. Okay. And back then, what I'm going to be questioning today is the consistency within their logic and why is it that we've picked and choose who gets to have something and who doesn't. Now, when Season 9 came out, they had said that Season 9 is going to be a fundamental change to the Overwatch 2 gameplay for every hero. They wanted to address community gameplay pain points and make these changes to respond to basically those. First of all, I don't ever understand who is complaining about the projectile sizes, but I assume this is something that the devs wanted to force simply because they realized that, well, everybody's going to have more HP. We want shots to be a little bit easier to land so it can maybe offset that, but whatever. Back then, they experimented with a 25 HP increase to 150 to 175 heroes. They experimented with 50 HP increase to 200 to 300 heroes, and then a 75 and 100 HP increase to basically the tanks, right? Ultimate cost saw an increase. That's where the amazing regen passive came in. Supports got it a little bit more of a buffed version. DPS saw the healing reduction by 20%. Quick melee saw a small damage increase to, offset like the breakpoints and everything. My problem is that leading up into Season 9 and throughout Season 8 and 7, I explicitly remember, because I did videos on this, is one of the major pain points was that there was too much burst damage in the game. Now, you couldn't actually take away the damage from the DPS role because it's a role that's actually designed to do that damage. And then supports, in some cases, needed that damage because, well, you don't want to just be the living free kill that gets like eradicated, right? So logically, the role that it made sense to lose a little bit of breakpoints in order to perhaps tone down damage in the game would have been the tank role. Well, this is where the problem started. Even though Season 9 brought these changes, the first set of characters that saw a breakpoint increase, albeit they saw it slowly and progressively throughout Season 9, 10, and 11, it was the tank role. Again, on your screen is the changes to the tank code. You can see that Self-Destruct saw a small change to the way the maximum explosion damage is. Doomfist saw changes to the Rocket Punch and how it interacts with Wall Slam and Max Impact. Rampage for Junker Queen. Reinhardt basically got a outright buff to his Rocket Hammer so that he could still 3-shot squishies with his like 1, 2, 3 swings, or 1 fire strike plus 2 swings, etc., etc. My point is that what was the point of trying to nerf the way burst damage functions in the game across the board if we're just going to look at one role that is a part of that cause, is a part of where burst damage is coming from, and then just outright buff it. Now progressively, the more and more of these changes start to come out in the game. If you actually jump on over to Season 11, which is again on your stream right now, I made the effort to going back and looking at some of this, you can actually progressively see, I've skipped over Season 10, but there is some in there as well. You can progressively see more and more breakpoint changes coming because the devs have realized by now that, well, it doesn't make a lot of characters feel good, and it just ends up making you feel like you have less impact on the game because it's harder to get kills, specifically for tanks. Wrecking Ball saw changes to the impact damage of his grappling claw. Pile driver movement lockout got increased so that there was more opportunity for him to do his left click spray. Minefield saw an increase. Again, Junkrat was a character that got super lost in the sauce with the Season 9 changes, so they had to literally give him a breakpoint increase so that he could still he could basically have his old breakpoints back in certain cases. And again, an argument can be made that the new armor, the way the new armor works, has screwed over breakpoints for a lot of different characters. They tried to buff up Hanzo by giving him more speed on the Dragon Strike, but this actually turned out to be an indirect nerf to the hero because, again, we've talked about it on the Hanzo video, so I'm not going to dig deep into it here. My point is I'm looking back at Season 9, Season 11, and I look at where the game is now, and the way it has evolved and shaped itself is exactly around, well, how breakpoints are interacting. Season 11 is where the game saw the biggest change ever. This is where the Kaiju Watch happened, where tanks got turned into monsters within the game that could barely be contested unless you truly did focus them down. And it played into the fantasy of the typical like low elo tank player, which turns out to be that a lot of low elo tank players, not saying everybody, but majority of low elo tank players, they seriously act like they're God's gift to gaming, and they act so entitled when they're playing this role that, well, I am the tank player, I deserve to take whatever space I want, I deserve not to get contested, I can sit in main and eat all the damage and nothing should happen to me, and when I start to interact with the other player, I should be allowed to do all the damage that I want. This is genuinely how low elo tank players act, and you will see that just across anywhere. Again, I'm not going to dig deeper into that. That's a little bit of rage bait. I'm just doing it for funsies on the side. But as we go along with this video, I do want to talk about that. It just didn't make sense to me that they wanted burst damage to be decreased in the game, and they took measures by increasing HP bars, but then they realized that, well, that just makes the game feel like ass, So they started buffing breakpoints in the game, but it started with the tank role, and progressively, at first, it was the tank role, even in Season 10, to some extent I remember, and in the beginning of Season 11, because Kaiju Watch happened in the middle point, that they had actually buffed the tank role. By this point, Roadhog had even gotten his breakpoints back, and it caused a massive uproar because people were like, why are we giving Roadhog of all characters his breakpoints back? Because I thought we wanted one-shots to happen less in the game. But then again, his damage got divided across Pigpen, this, that, whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, Roadhog can't actually function without his one shot and his breakpoints. Well, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess we're just picking and choosing who can have their breakpoint or not, because apparently they just function, or don't function without it. And that doesn't make sense. Again, progressively, as the game went on, Cassidy got his range back that allows him to actually be a threat. Okay, and then that comes to the most relevant examples today, which is Freya and Sojourn. My point is that Freya is a character that has very lethal breakpoints that allow her to two-tap people across the map to some extent, right? And then on the other side, you have Sojourn, who has access to a perk, a minor perk, mind you, that allows her to give herself better breakpoints for her ultimate that she can use at the safety of range and have great mobility to just completely eradicate people around the map. My point is that the reason I don't like this change or this approach with Freya and Sojourn is, while I am a fan of both characters and I do play both of them, I think it's weird to draw the line with these two characters. I think I was watching a Relt, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry, Relt and Spylo video where they had discussed that I think Spylo was told that they couldn't allow Freya to lose the breakpoints just yet because they personally feel that Freya cannot exist without the breakpoints. Well, I find that logic to be extremely silly, because now we're not being consistent with anything in the game. Because again, progressively from Season 11 all the way to now, Season 17, I think we're in Season 17, the problem with the game now is everybody to some extent has been compensated for their breakpoints, one way or the other. I mean, Tracer, for God's sake, is back at 6. Now, an argument can be made that Tracer is being forced to have 6 damage DPS pellets or whatever, because they are trying to change up the meta for OWCS and everything. But also, as a player that's expecting any form of consistency within the game, it's exhausting to be a part of, because, well, today my character gets to have their breakpoints and tomorrow they don't. How is this a fair feeling? Not to mention that Tracer also got to maintain her previous buffs throughout Season 9 and 11 and the patches that had an impact on the game, where she got a spread decrease that not only allowed her to have a little bit more range, but a lot more lethality when she's up in your face. So this Tracer, the one that we have now, is the strongest version of Tracer that we have ever had across the entirety of Overwatch. So apparently this is okay, right? But by the balance team's standard, this is okay. Freya can be lethal because, well, apparently without the lethality, she can't exist. And Sojourn should have her breakpoints because, I don't know, they just never bothered to explain. They're like, yeah, I mean, it's a minor perk, guys. She'll get it by her first ultimate, so it makes an impact with the ult. But, I mean, it is what it is. Like, don't you guys like lifesteal on Dragonblade? Anyways, my point is that this is from the perspective that breakpoints went up. Let's look at the cases where breakpoints went down. Genji lost breakpoints, and he completely lost his combo-oriented playstyle to the point where people are looking at him as a sustain-based brawly duelist rather than what he originally was, a assassin meant to literally dive the backline and actually played as a dive hero. Hey, by the way, way back in Overwatch 1, he was actually being replaced in dive comps even with 28 DPS shurikens and the 120 blade. But nobody ever wants to talk about that because it conveniently doesn't fit their argument when it comes to this hero getting his breakpoints back. But I guess it's fine because Roadhog needs to one-shot people, right? Like the mental gymnastics I see people do in this community to go around who deserves to have breakpoints and not is so stupid, because it's either we allow lethality to exist across the game or we don't. Right? And I'll get to some hot takes too. It's like, oh, okay, well, if Freya and Sojourn can get lethality, be it with or without the perks, why don't other characters get to get their original breakpoints back too? And then the problem is that it begins to drop off and go over to some other characters too. For example, Tracer gets to have 6 damage per pellet. I don't care if they revert that shit. The problem is that Tracer has it now. So my problem with that is, well, if Tracer can have the 6 DPS pellets and the previous vessel before and be the strongest that she's ever been and have some of the best perks in the game, why are we drawing the line that Genji can't have 28 DPS shuriken? Nobody can give me an answer to that question. Genuinely nobody. It does not break him. It does not create any crazy situations. He still has 3 different projectiles he has to try and land. And again, the hero is good as always because of the meta that he fits into. And I'm not saying the hero's bad. I've been consistently rating the hero in A or S tier for the past 4 or 5 seasons now. And again, the videos are there and I know what I'm talking about. My problem is not that. My problem is about consistency. You want to talk about consistency and you don't want me to use Genji as an example? That's perfectly fine. Why did we randomly decide to remove Hanzo's one-shot headshot, but we didn't ever experiment with something like that for Widowmaker, but we drew the line at Hanzo and said, yeah, well, you see this projectile DPS hero, well, yeah, he can't have breakpoints because it frustrates support players. Okay, well, if we're gonna apply this logic to snipers not being able to snipe, why does Widowmaker not follow that logic? Oh, but then it's like progressively, like for the like 3-4 seasons that Hanzo didn't have his breakpoint, he turned out to be one of the worst performing characters in Overwatch history, and they just have to outright give him back. And they mentioned in the fucking dev blog that the reason this character is not performing is because we took away his breakpoints. So you now understand why breakpoints are so important and why I fight for them. Another character that initially suffered, that again we saw in the season 11 patch, was Junkrat. They actually had to buff up Junkrat a little bit so that he could perform again, because he was already ass and awkward in the season 9 era of Overwatch. And I mean, he's back to being ass and awkward again, because again, the game has been buffed up, like the way healing and everything and armor and this and that, and all of his counters have been buffed up. It's just a never-ending cycle of us reliving the same patch notes in different forms and cases. But there's always certain little exceptions here and there where it's like, yeah, you see, we're gonna increase lethality across the board except this one guy and except this one other character, even though to some extent they're healthy and they're not dishonest characters. It's fine. I mean, for God's sake, we for some strange reason decided that Reaper needed a breakpoint one, even though in my opinion Reaper was such a ridiculously underrated character and super good. And they were just like, yeah, you know, well, like, what was their excuse? Their bullshit excuse for the Reaper buff and Tracer buff, they were like, yeah, well, you know, map bans. That's literally what it boiled down to. They were like, yeah, by the way, like, you know, people will strategically do map bans and strategically do hero bans I don't know if they said the hero ban thing or not, so I might be wrong over there. But they were like, yeah, well, you know, map bans might happen. It might not allow Tracer and Reaper to thrive. I mean, that's actually one of the things they even did to outright buff Widowmaker's SMG. They were like, yeah, you see, Widowmaker might be getting banned in the sniper situations, so we want to buff her up to where you might not, you know, you can actually use her in other situations. But then the problem is that you inherently just buff the character even more to when she will get played in the sniper scenarios. And this is where my only argument is that, okay, I don't care if you want to be inconsistent and you want to be like a little bit hypocritical with the way you do balancing in the game, and you're like, okay, we don't want burst damage, we want to nerf burst damage, so this is one instance of us nerfing it indirectly or directly. But then you go and you turn around and you're like, no, this should need a damage increase, that should need I mean, for God's sake, like, what is it, like in this patch, even in this patch, they were like, yeah, Moira needs a nerf, sorry, healing needs a nerf, but anyways, here's a compensation to Lucio and Moira because, I don't know, shrug. So if at any point, like, there is no DPS passive being applied, especially Moira, she's building Coalescence like on a freaking cooldown now because of how amazing the new healing breakpoint is. Again, I digress. My point is, I want consistency and I want to be fair. You can't just decide, well, okay, well, you see, we don't want breakpoints for this and this character, but over here it's allowed because, well, we think it might not be the case. Well, by that logic, I could make the argument that, okay, if that's the, well, you were also the same dev team that decided Hanzo didn't need the one shot because it's unhealthy for the game, didn't remove it from Widowmaker, and then outright embarrassingly gave it back to Hanzo, telling us that, oh yeah, by the way, the hero just completely like died. The hero was gone. He was the worst character in the game. We're sorry about that. Here's the breakpoint back, and here's the original charge back as well, because it's too much downtime before something else just completely destroys him. So again, I'm genuinely begging, please, for God's sake, give us consistency. If you're gonna be buffing, if you're gonna allow lethal breakpoints back into the DPS role onto certain characters, why not be fair and give it to the rest of the role too? It's an exhausting experience. I just want to see consistency. It's either we are nerfing sustain in the game, it's either we are nerfing lethality in the game, or we're not. And I don't know which one it is, because every other patch, it's literally a mental gymnastics from the balance team that, no, you don't get it. This character needs it, but this character doesn't. This game's balance generally just feels like balance for the sake of balance and not balance for the sake of actually achieving an objective. The way balance should work in this game is you aim to achieve a certain objective with your balance, and then you look and turn around at the heroes that are unhealthy in the game, that are not good in the game, and you dedicate time and resources to fixing those heroes to better fit into the game. You don't always have to shake up the balance with your, well, we need people to return and stay in the game philosophy. No, you don't need to do that. If the game is good, the game feels good, people will stay, people will return, people will get addicted. This is true. I've seen this happen across other competitive games a lot of the times. Funnily enough, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I've seen it happen in League of Legends of all places. But again, that's not what I'm trying to argue here. My point is instead of wasting all of this time and energy of putting us in a balance loop of, well, this character is not meta, this character is not, Orisa is meta now, Orisa is not, Maug is meta, Maug is not, instead of constantly making us run in this big circle, put the game in a state where it's considered healthily balanced, and then look to better the state of the unhealthy heroes and actually help address their problems within the game. That's it. I'm out.